stay with the same record label throughout?
Oh my God, no.
The Dramatics had it all: talent, charisma, and the kind of sound that could stop you in your tracks. But behind those smooth, soulful hits was a storm of drama, personal struggles, and legal battles that nearly tore them apart. From their early days in Detroit to the tragic events that reshaped the group forever, their journey wasn't just about making music, it was about surviving the chaos that comes with fame, loss, and the unforgiving music industry. Buckle up. This isn't your typical Motown success story. This is the real, messy, and untold saga of the Dramatics.
And let me know. Wow, man, I love the Dramatics, man. They got...
The Dramatics, originally called the Sensations, kicked things off in Detroit in the early 60s. The OG crew included Ron Banks, Larry Demps, Rod Davis, Elbert Wilkins, and Larry Reed, but they switched things up and became the Dramatics in '65.
You were shooting for the Tigers. You was going to Tiger Stadium.
Yeah. But they had some great talent that came out of it.
They dropped their first track, Bingo, that same year under a Detroit label, Wingate Records, which was connected to Golden World. But things really started to change when Motown took over Golden World in '67, and the Dramatics switched to Sport Records. Their track All Because of You got a little attention, but the real game changer came after the 1967 Detroit riots. Things took a dark turn when the crew's valet, Fred Temple, was tragically killed by the cops at the Algiers motel. It rocked the whole group, so much so that Reed and Davis couldn't handle it and bounced. Enter William Ouija Howard and Willie Ford, who stepped in to fill the gap left behind.
Here's a young man that knows how to rock the house. Ouija, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Good.
The drama didn't stop with the hits. Right after things started popping off, Howard and Wilkins had their own fallout and split to create their own version of the Dramatics. They dropped a track called No Rebate on Love under a new name, A Dramatic Experience, and that's when all hell broke loose. It turned into a full-on legal war over who owned the name The Dramatics. In the end, Ron Banks and his crew took the rights, leaving Howard and Wilkins with no choice but to stick with A Dramatic Experience. That was just the start of a never-ending mess of lineup changes and drama that would mess with the group for years. Ron had a major struggle with his voice. L.J. Reynolds, the face of the group, finally opened up about something nobody knew about the late Ron Banks. Apparently, Ron had a serious struggle with his voice. It wasn't just the usual vocal wear and tear. He actually lost his first tenor voice and had to drop to baritone. To keep the high notes alive, they brought in someone else to hit those notes. But the crazy part? Ron was such a legend that fans didn't even bat an eye. They just went along with it.
Ron and LJ, that's a beautiful tag team right there, just to hear those.
Ron kept it all bottled up for the longest time. He was taking meds, hoping to get his falsetto back. But the truth was, he had a lesion on his throat, and those high notes were out of reach for over 5 years. Still, he kept performing, pretending like nothing was wrong, but it was eating at him. It wore him down. He started drinking more, trying to numb the fact that the voice everyone knew him for was slipping through his fingers. Most people didn't even realize Ron wasn't always the one leading the songs. LJ was actually the voice behind most of their biggest tracks. But when Me and Mrs. Jones dropped, everything flipped.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
The label started pushing Ron to the front, slapping his name on everything. Suddenly it was all Ron Banks featuring the Dramatics. That's when the spotlight hit heavy. LJ later admitted he felt like if they hadn't thrown all that pressure on Ron, maybe things would have turned out different. Fame can really mess with you if you're not ready for it. After LJ stepped away to do his own thing, things started going downhill for Ron. His health was already shaky, but he kept brushing it off, acting like it was no big deal. The more he ignored it, the worse it got. He didn't like doctors, didn't want to hear bad news, and that stubborn streak ended up costing him. In the end, it was high blood pressure that led to a stroke, and that's what took him out. After Ron passed, Everyone thought that was the end of the dramatics, but LJ wasn't letting it die that easy. He switched things up, brought in some new energy, and slowly started building things back. The shows kept rolling, fans kept showing up, and every performance turned into a tribute to Ron while still keeping the music moving. LJ made it clear there was no replacing Ron. He'd seen what was out there and wasn't exactly blown away. On top of that, he was over the constant mess and egos. He wasn't getting any younger, and babysitting grown folks wasn't on his to-do list. LJ had plans to finally tell the real story, the stuff that never made it to stage lights or fancy interviews. He'd been tossing around the idea of dropping a book called After Death, maybe even turning it into a DVD movie. But he made one thing super clear. It wasn't going to be one of those cookie-cutter Motown group stories. What they went through? Way messier, way deeper. And after Ron passed, things didn't just settle. They got even more complicated. After Ron was gone, everything kind of exploded. The group's business turned into a circus, with people popping up out of nowhere trying to run things. Folks who'd never lifted a finger for the dramatics suddenly had a whole lot to say about what should happen next. LJ had already been handling most of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and now he was stuck trying to untangle the mess. He reached out to Ron's wife, hoping to keep things peaceful and make sure she and the kids were good financially. He did what he could, but according to him, she started asking for way more than he could promise. Things got even messier when the dramatics got dragged into a full-on legal fight. LJ, who'd basically been steering the ship for years, ended up going head-to-head with Ron's widow, Sandra. She tried to lock down the group's name for herself and shut LJ out completely. So he took it to court. That lawsuit turned into a big deal, not just for them, but for a lot of other groups too. It opened up that never-ending question in the music world. Who actually owns a group's name after the originals start passing away? For the dramatics, it wasn't just business. It was personal, and it played out in front of everybody. The whole fight over who gets to use a group name? Yeah, that kind of chaos has been happening forever. The music world stays messy when it comes to names, trademarks, and who gets to cash in on the legacy. Look at the Temptations. Once some of the originals passed, the ones left behind had to lawyer up just to keep the name. They eventually settled, and the remaining guys kept doing their thing under the OG name. Then there was the Supremes. After Diana Ross dipped, the rest of the crew kept the show going, but not without drama. There were legal back and forths, and in the end, they got to use the name, but Diana still held the rights to all the classic tracks. Total headache. The Four Seasons had their own mess too. Frankie Valli and Bob Gaudio basically had to drag their ex-bandmates to court just to shut down the Copycat Act. The judge gave them full control of the name, and the others were told to cut it out. And then you've got the Beach Boys. Once Brian Wilson stepped back, the rest of the group got tangled in a legal tug-of-war over who got to tour with the name. The court ended up siding with the crew that stayed, and they kept the name going. All this just showed how ugly it gets when the business side isn't locked down, and how tricky it is to keep a band name alive when everybody wants a piece of it. Eventually, they figured something out. Sandra Banks, repping Ron's estate, cut a deal with LJ. He could keep using the Dramatics name, but every show came with a price tag for the estate. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing, but it kept the legacy going without totally blowing up. LJ kept the hits coming, running through the songs that put them on the map. Stuff like What You See Is What You Get Up and Get Down, In the Rain, and Be My Girl. The Dramatics weren't just background noise and soul. They stacked up 40 top 10 records and helped shape what R&B even sounded like back then. Their music got a whole new lease on life in the 90s when Snoop Dogg pulled them into the G-Funk scene. They were featured on tracks like Doggy Dog World and later Ballin', which put them on the radar of a fresh crowd and brought that smooth, soulful sound to a whole new generation. LJ didn't just sit around though. He kept pushing with his solo stuff. His album Get to This dropped tracks like Come Get to This, Stepping Out Tonight, which hit number 24 on Mediabase's chart. He also had singles like Cheating on Me and You Sure Love to Ball, making the rounds, and fans kept showing up, especially on YouTube, where the music videos lived on. By 2017, LJ was gearing up to drop his 9th solo album. He blended the classic with the new, a Marvin Gaye cover, Mercy, Mercy Me, Stop the War, Save the World, a revamped version of his 70s hit Key to the World, now titled Giving All My Love, Key to the World, and a fresh track called Bad Girl, featuring The Dramatics. The message was loud and clear. He wasn't slowing down. LJ was still grinding, still recording, and still carrying that legendary weight on his shoulders.